Alright, let's see how fast this horse runs. Hey guys, I just wanted to showcase my no unique ball lightning sorcerer. This build is an all-rounder, very tanky, and an absolute powerhouse. It is also quite the boss killer, as you will see later. There are quite a few ball lightning builds this season because of how tremendously powerful sorcerer has become this season, but most of those builds will require some form of unique item for best optimization. I, however, am sick and tired of not getting the right uniques, so I said screw that bad luck baboon anus. I'm making a no unique build, and god damn it, I'm gonna make it work. And I did. I made it work. The basic playstyle of the build is cycling between Arc Lash and Ball Lightning because casting a basic skill reduces the mana cost of the next casted core or mastery skill, thanks to our aspect of efficiency. We then pick up a few of the numerous spawning crackling energies that spawn to recover some mana, and both of these combined will infinitely sustain our mana. We can generate lots of Ball Lightnings this way, and we don't need to rely on unstable currents to generate it, which brings me to the next point, which is we do have unstable currents, but we only use it when either there's a lot of elites or during a boss fight. This is because we're not centering the entire build on cooldown reduction just for unstable currents, since that steers the build into an uncomfortable tunnel vision in terms of gear, and I'd rather not throw all our eggs in one basket. This is a tier 100 Nightmare Dungeon in the background here, and the damage is certainly respectable as it melts enemies, and because of my 7,000 base armor, I stand pretty tanky against most hits. I did die twice from the dungeon's lightning storm, but don't look at that, okay? Just ignore it. No, seriously though, all jokes aside, this build is pretty amazing. It doesn't require any specific gear at all. All it really needs is just general damage, general defense, and some mana reduction. That's literally it. You will get carried from Ball Lightning itself, and it's awesome. I had a ton of fun building it from scratch and playtesting different ideas with it and finally settling on this final version. I will say though, the one thing this build lacks is movement speed, so if you want more movement speed, you will have to sacrifice something else to get it. I would suggest letting go of a little bit of damage or defense, since the utility here is pretty damn important. At the end of the video, I will showcase 5 different Lilith kills and do a quick rundown of what I did, and honestly, anyone should be able to kill Lilith now. It's really not as difficult as it was in Season 1. So without further ado, let's jump into the skill tree. So you want to start with Arc Lash and get 1 point into Fireball for the enchantment, then go into Chain Lightning. This will easily allow you to clear packs that are close and far, and Chain Lightning bounces between you and the boss, so it's even decent as single target. You then work your way to Teleport, Frost Nova, and Flame Shield, then max Glass Cannon, and put a point into Elemental Attunement. You can skip the Conjuration passives until later. Once you get Ball Lightning, spec out of Chain Lightning and fully spec into Ball Lightning, as this will be your bread and butter from now on. Static Discharge and Invigorating Conduit will help with mana sustain, then get Unstable Current and just put in 1 extra point for the attack speed. We won't be relying on crackling energy damage or cooldown reduction from it, so there's no reason to go further. Then I max out the lightning wheel here, except for the crit chance because it's too minuscule and we get plenty of crit chance otherwise. And lastly, we will take our Fire Mastery for the tanky armor of a lightning that allows us to face tank packs of mobs and survive. Make sure to go back and spec into the Conjuration passives for extra survivability and lucky hit chance. While leveling, the best enchantment is Fireball because of clear speed. However, for the final 2 enchantments, I have Firebolt to cause all attacks to burn enemies, which greatly boosts our damage through the Paragon Board. And the second enchantment I have is Chain Lightning. The reason is because we are casting so much and we're using and generating and using so much mana constantly that this will consistently proc our Chain Lightning, which due to our aspect of accelerating, every time we crit with Chain Lightning, we get a huge boost in attack speed. And since we focus on building crit chance, we can reliably crit with our Chain Lightning as well. Moving on to gear aspects and jewels, on my helm, I was pretty much focusing on getting basic attack speed and cooldown reduction, and I've imprinted Mage Lord's aspect, which heavily boosts our damage reduction against crowds of enemies. I've also socketed a ruby for +% max life. My chest is a hybrid of damage and damage reduction. I found that having a nice middle ground on a chest piece brings a nice balance to a build. I've imprinted the aspect of might to boost damage reduction and socketed 2 rubies for +% max life. On my gloves, I focused on getting attack speed, crit chance, and crit damage. You want to go all out offense on your gloves because of the affixes it can roll. I've also imprinted the aspect of control to boost damage against stun, frozen, or immobilized enemies. Our build can easily stun through our lightning passives and through our aspect of audacity, and we get guaranteed freeze from Frost Nova, so this aspect is perfect for our damage. It also greatly boosts our damage to staggered bosses. On my legs, I focused on getting damage reduction and plus the ball lightning, since that's the only place we can get this affix. I've also imprinted aspect of disobedience to greatly boost our already 7k armor and make us more tanky. And I've socketed 2 rubies for +% max life. On my boots, I focused on getting movement speed and mana reduction. I've imprinted aspect of audacity for the guaranteed stun on crowds, which helps with both damage and survivability. On my wand, I focused on double crit damage and vulnerability damage. Vulnerability damage has been nerfed, so you can opt to get mastery skill damage instead if you'd like. I've imprinted the rapid aspect to boost our basic attack speed and socketed an emerald to boost our crit damage to vulnerable enemies. On my amulet, which is damn near perfect for this build, I have perfect mana reduction and +3 to masteries and glass cannon. I also have near perfect +% intelligence boost because this gives me damage, resistances, and enables secondary boosts on my Paragon board. The only required thing I'd say is to have +3 mastery skills because this boosts our ball lightning, and our second priority would be mana reduction so we can cast more ball lightning. The second passive skill boosting affix doesn't have to be glass cannon. It is really nice for our damage, but honestly, it can be replaced with other offensive passives and work just fine. And I've socketed a skull for armor. On my rings, I tried focusing on crit chance, crit damage, vulnerable damage, and lucky hit chance. Any combination of the four is good, but honestly, the ideal ring would probably have crit chance, double crit damage, and lucky hit chance. I've imprinted aspect of efficiency on one ring to help with mana sustain where we cycle between arc lash and ball lightning, and I've imprinted accelerating aspect on the other ring to greatly boost our damage whenever we crit with chain lightning. And like my amulet, I've also socketed skulls on my rings as well for that armor boost. Lastly, for my focus, I focused on getting crit chance, mana reduction, lucky hit, and basic skill attack speed. I honestly think these four aspects are ideal since it has both damage and utility. I've imprinted aspect of overwhelming currents, which greatly boosts our damage through unstable currents, and I've socketed an emerald for plus crit damage to vulnerable enemies. Lastly, just as a general affix to think about, I chose to focus on building my stats through my gear in order to fully unlock all secondary boosts on my Paragon board. This is why you saw plus to all stats and plus dex and plus willpower and +% int on my gear. If you don't care too much about stats or Paragon board secondaries, then of course you can always focus on other affixes that fit your particularities. Alrighty, so for the starting Paragon board, I get all 4 rare nodes and socket Enchanter for the boost to non-physical damage. I also allocate 65 ints to further boost my DPS. Then the second board I get is Static Surge because this automates my Chain Lightning, which when it crits, it'll proc my aspect of Accelerating, which boosts my attack speed and thus further boosts my DPS. And on top of that, it makes enemies vulnerable and restores some mana as well. It's just an amazing second board for many reasons. I also grab Overwhelming, Incapacitate, and Paralyzing for DPS, and Electro for resistances. On this glyph, I socketed Destruction to give me a massive boost to crit damage, and I allocate 44 dex to further boost it. My third board is Ceaseless Conduit, which I actually don't allocate because it's unnecessary for this build. I do pick up Hunter Killer for DPS, Electro for resistances, and Galvanic Catalyst for more DPS. I socket Control for a massive damage boost to crowd controlled enemies, which we have a ton of crowd control, and I allocate 49 dex to further boost it. My fourth board is Enchantment Master, which I also don't allocate because I don't think it's necessary for our enchantments. This is a massive DPS board for us since Elementalist, Elemental Balance, Erudite, and Ruinous, which are the 4 rare nodes we pick up on this board, all greatly boost our DPS, especially when we have all the stat requirements unlocked, and this is why it's very important to fulfill all your stat requirements through your extra gear affix slots. My socketed glyph is Adept, which some might get it sooner, but I didn't have any issues picking it up here. It gives you lots of damage, but what's important about this is that it increases the physical size of your ball lightnings, making them bigger, targeting a bigger area, and allowing you to stand a little further apart from the enemy. It's a nice quality of life enhancement. For our last and final board, we go Burning Instinct. Now, a lot of people might avoid this because it requires you to have your Firebolt enchanted as opposed to a different enchantment. However, I'd still recommend it because being able to burn enemies and unlocking the potential of this board will give you so much damage and damage reduction and make you even tankier. Smoldering Embers and Safeguard alone give you a massive 34.5% damage reduction from burning enemies once you max out all the stat requirements, of course. Cinders and Kindling give you 60% damage boost and plus 16% damage to elites once fully unlocked. Lastly, we socket Flame Feeder to give us a huge boost in damage to burning enemies and also give us multiplicative damage to burning enemies as well. This whole board and glyph combo is really good. And lastly, for the seasonal vampire powers, I've chosen to go with Moonrise and Ravenous for attack speed, Domination for damage, Undying for life sustain, and Sanguine Embrace for defense. Alrighty, so for Lilith, I start by ramping up my ball lightnings. I do this by auto attacking with Arc Lash before each cast of ball lightning, just so I can reduce its mana cost and therefore be able to regenerate more of them. Once she pushes me back, I teleport right back in and keep cycling between Arc Lash and Ball Lightning. And at this point, crackling energies will start generating. So while alternating my attacks, I move around slightly to pick up some energy, and this general attack and movement pattern will infinitely sustain my mana so I can cast as much Ball Lightning as I want without ever using my unstable currents. Eventually, I'll do enough damage for her to fly up, come back down, spawn ogres or demons depending on how much damage I did, and fly up again. I quickly kill the ogres or demons so that she doesn't do her spike waves, and when she comes back down, I quickly try to end her phase 1. If she spawned ogres and I couldn't kill her quick enough, then she'll spawn demons and do a guaranteed spike wave. If she spawned demons and I can't kill her quick enough, she'll immediately go up and do a spike wave. Either way, both scenarios should be fine because we have our flame shield invulnerability to avoid immediate death, but we still would rather avoid this altogether. Once she gets to phase 2, I wait for her wings to start appearing, and this is where I found to be the perfect time to pop the unstable currents and start ramping up the ball lightnings again. Once she fully spawns in, I try to spam as much as I can to get her health bar down to the first 75% threshold, because if you can knock off at least 25% health quickly enough, she'll skip spawning the 4 blood pools and go straight to breaking off the north platform, which is exactly what you want. If you don't do enough damage quick enough, she will spawn the blood pools and you'll have to deal with dodging the one-hit KO spirit projectiles, which is just an awful time. But hopefully you have enough damage throughout your build and will be able to do 25% of her health quick enough, and then it's a cakewalk. Just follow her around and keep hitting her and avoid the platform deaths by going back to the center once the floor clears up. Try your best to drop her health to 0 before she breaks the final platform, because if you don't, then she'll do one final potential one-hit KO attack pattern before she dies, which can probably be avoided through dodging and or flame shields, but we don't want to take that chance. If you can get her health to 0 before she breaks the final platform, then the fight will end immediately after she lands from breaking it. And that's it. The loot is absolutely atrocious for how difficult this boss can get, and it's absolutely not worth farming this boss. Just do it for the glory or achievements and move on. I've killed this boss like 6 times and she's only dropped loot once. And I'm sick and tired.